Hello, my name is Sharon and I live in New Brunswick, Canada. I represent a small but growing group of concerned citizens who informally call ourselves the Citizens Action Team. I'd like to talk to you for a moment about bilingualism and about the impact that it has on democracy and on equality here in Canada. Our Charter of Rights and Freedoms is part of the Constitution, which is the supreme law of Canada. Generally speaking, all other laws must be consistent with the rules set out in the Constitution. If they are not, they may be invalid. Section 1 of the Charter states that the government may limit charter rights only where those limits are ones that a free and democratic society would accept as being reasonable. So let me ask, do you think that it's reasonable that in a free and democratic country, less than 18% of the entire Canadian population are eligible to be Prime Minister, Auditor General, or Chief Electoral Officer? Because these positions do require that you be bilingual, and yet according to the 2011 Government of Canada statistics, the percentage of Canadians who are able to speak both official languages, English and French, is only 17.5%. Although a proposed bill made by the NDP in 2008 to require all Supreme Court justices to be bilingual failed, a new push is underway by Liberal leader Justin Trudeau. If it succeeds, it will mean that some of the best legal minds in the country will be excluded. Apparently, the language that you speak is more important than your experience, history, and qualifications to be one of the strongest and best legal voices in the country. Already to be head of the Bank of Canada, the Canadian Armed Forces, the CRTC, or the CBC, you must be bilingual. This is an awful lot of power to concentrate within such a small percent of the population. Have you ever heard of a true democracy where a linguistic minority of less than 18% held a permanent and legal monopoly on all of the country's top positions? Doesn't sound very democratic to me. Section 3 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms addresses democratic rights. It states that every citizen of Canada has the right to vote in an election of members of the House of Commons or of a legislative assembly and to be qualified for membership therein. Section 3 guarantees to all citizens the right to be involved in the election of their governments. It also gives them the right to vote in federal, provincial, or territorial elections, along with the right to run for public office themselves. Do you see a conflict of interest here between the Charter and the practice imposed by our government? I do. Section 15 of our Charter addresses equality rights. It states, every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to the equal protection and equal benefits of the law without discrimination. The Supreme Court of Canada has stated that the purpose of Section 15 is to protect those groups who suffer social, political, and legal disadvantage in society. Discrimination occurs where a person suffers disadvantages or is denied opportunities available to other members of society. Section 16(1) confirms that English and French are Canada's official languages. It also states that these languages have equal status in terms of their use within and by all federal institutions. The province of New Brunswick is also officially bilingual, and 16(1) makes clear that both of these communities have equal rights and privileges, including the right to distinct educational institutions and such distinct cultural institutions as are necessary for the preservation and promotion of those communities. This section also makes clear that both the federal government and the government of New Brunswick have a duty to protect and promote those rights. Section 17. Everyone has the right to use English or French in any debates and other proceedings of Parliament. Everyone has the right to use English or French in any debates and other proceedings of the Legislature of New Brunswick. Are you starting to see a trend here? English and French are equal. Neither is more important than the other, neither has higher standing than the other. Section 18. The statutes, records, and journals of Parliament shall be printed and published in English and French, and both language versions are equally authoritative. The statutes, records, and journals of the Legislature of New Brunswick shall be printed and published in English and French, and both language versions are equally authoritative. Section 19. Either English or French may be used by any person in or in any pleading in or process issuing from any court established by the Parliament. Either English or French may be used by any person in or in any pleading in or process issuing from any court in New Brunswick. Any member of the public in Canada has the right to communicate with and to receive available services from any head or central office of an institution of the Parliament or Government of Canada in English or French, and has the same right with respect to any other office of any such institution where there is a significant demand for communications and where the type of office, the nature of the office, it is reasonable that the communication with other services from that office be available in both English and French. Section 20 also states that any member of the public of New Brunswick has the right to communicate with and to receive available services from any office of an institution of the legislature or government of New Brunswick in English or French. Sections 17, 18, 19, and 20 all deal with similar issues, the equality of French and English in particular situations. Sections 16 to 20 make clear that official language rights apply both to the federal government and to the provincial government of New Brunswick. Residents of New Brunswick also have the right to use English or French when they deal with their provincial government. Nothing in Section 16 to 20 abrogates or derogates from any right, privilege, or obligation with respect to the English or the French languages that exist or is continued by virtue of any other provision of the Constitution of Canada. Nowhere in any part of the Charter is there a requirement for or even an expectation of any Canadian citizen learning the language of another in order to enjoy their rights. The requirement by federal government and by the provincial government of New Brunswick for any individual be able to speak both official languages in order to be eligible for any position in this country, up to and including Prime Minister, is being forced upon us without cause or justification by the very governments tasked with upholding the Charter. This is not the 1900s. With technology, global trade, and global communications, language, any language, is not and should not be an obstacle. The tools and resources exist to make communication almost instantaneous with translation and interpretation tools. There is no reason, no justification for any Canadian to be excluded from pursuing any position anywhere in this country due to language. Shouldn't opportunity based on merit be an option for every Canadian? Is this not what freedom and democracy represent? Realistically, while English and French may be the official languages of Canada, Canada is not a bilingual or bicultural country. We are multilingual and multicultural. It's time that equality and opportunity exist for all Canadians, period.